Okay, well, good morning to everyone. We appreciate you taking time to join. Again, my name is Sam Wilson. I'm on the product marketing team here at Dragos. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items for today. The session will be recorded and we will send the link out to the recording afterwards. So if you miss it or want to share it with your colleagues, you'll have access to that shortly. We have muted all of your lines, but we still really want you to interact with us. So please use the Q&A chat to submit questions you have, and we'll get to them as we're able during the webinar, and some will hopefully be able to cover at the end as well. But we really appreciate you taking time to join us today. We know there's a lot going on in your worlds and in the world in general, and we really value your time. And we hope that you find this webinar informative. We try to have a good mix of informational and practical or tactical details in the content. And I'm very excited at what we've been able to pull together for you today. We have a couple of really great speakers from the company that have joined us. Kimberly Graham, Senior Director of Product Management. She'll be giving an overview of some of the platform capabilities, because we know that not all of you are familiar with our technology, and sometimes we forget to explain the things that it can do. So we'll cover that very quickly. And then John Burns. John is one of our principal industrial hunters from the OT Watch team. These are the guys that are on the front lines. They use our platform every day in their jobs with customer data. And so John's helped us to create a really nice demo around what the platform can do with CHERNOVITE. You may have heard about CHERNOVITE before. We've been making some noise around it. This webinar is not intended to be a deep dive on CHERNOVITE or the associated malware toolkit called Pipedream. We will do some quick overviews, but we wanted to make this content practical. So we're going to use the platform to illustrate how you would look for potential activity for vulnerable devices, different notifications that could be related, and John's going to show us that shortly. But let's dive in here. So very quickly, for those that aren't familiar with Dragos, I'm sure you've heard our safeguarding civilization kind of corporate tagline. But the way that we see our portfolio and what it provides to the market, it's all kind of centered around our platform. So the technology, the piece that's in the middle, this really is the OT cyber expertise that comes from all of our frontline experience, and it's codified into how we do threat intelligence, notifications, asset visibility. All the components of what we do as a company for our customers is based around the intelligence and the expertise that really is put into the platform. But around that, so we have threat intel analysts that are looking for new threats that are either active out there in customer environments. There are other places we're able to pull telemetry and get some insight, and this really informs what it is that goes into our platform. So this is some of the secret sauce that we have as a company. And then we have a lot of different professional or global services that we're able to offer our customers. Many of the service engagements, in fact, more than half use the platform in some manner. So we want to make sure that our customers appreciate the fact that there's a connection between the expertise and some of the solutions that we're offering customers. And then lastly, we know that our expertise is no good if it's in a vacuum. We do what we can to share with the community. We have different solutions that in fact are explicitly designed to make sure that we're sharing intel with the community. We're hearing back from partners, and this ecosystem that we have centered around the platform is what sets us apart from some of the other solutions that you might be familiar with. So as I mentioned before, we're not going to do a deep dive on CHERNOVITE or Pipedream specifically, but a quick overview I think would be helpful. So CHERNOVITE is one of 19 or so different threat groups that Dragos has identified and we've been tracking for a while. The impact to ICS, in this case for CHERNOVITE and the toolkit that has been developed and Dragos has called this Pipedream, includes things like loss of safety, availability and control, tampering with control. And this toolkit and the group, we don't believe that their target is to develop any kind of initial access. Rather, it's like ICS kill chain stage 2. So once access has been obtained, that's when they would be able to to use this toolkit. So a very quick timeline in terms of how things progressed for us this year, and we go into all of this in much more detail in other webinars that we ran a few weeks ago, and our customers through the customer portal have access to a lot more detail as well. But we identified Pipedream in early 2022 before it was employed in the wild. And at that point, our analysts began to rip apart the malware and understand its capabilities. And as quickly as we had a sense of what threat this posed to the ICS community, we began to share some of that intel with our customers. That intel then starts to inform and influence knowledge pack development. So our knowledge packs are these regular updates to our platform that include a number of different things. And this is one of the mechanisms by which that gets into our platform. And then lastly, our worldview customers, they receive ongoing detailed guidance based on these different threat groups or different types of malware or toolkits like Pipedream. And just to give you an idea of the potential impact, so far we know of this affecting or targeting Schneider Electric systems, PLCs, Omron. The concerning thing in this case, of course, is that the toolkit's leveraging native ICS protocols that are used by hundreds of different devices. And there's different libraries and protocols that it's leveraging as part of those different modules. We've identified at least 5 modules. I won't go into each of them here, but if you'd like more information, I encourage you to go back, and we'll have a link before the end of the webinar, and you can learn a lot more. There's a white paper where we go into depth, and a few blog posts as well, where you can see different mitigation controls and ways to use the platform to do a hunt if you're concerned about CHERNOVITE or Pipedream being in your environment. This is the URL, dragos.com/Pipedream, and you can do a search as well once you're on our website. All right, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kimberly Graham. Kimberly's going to provide an overview of our platform capabilities in general, and then we'll transition into some of the more specific things that John Burns pulled a really great demo together for. The paint isn't even dry. John was working on it right up until yesterday, so we're excited to share a walkthrough of a live demo of what the platform can do around CHERNOVITE and Pipedream. So Kimberly, if you're ready, go ahead.
Awesome, thanks, Sam. So I'm Kimberly Graham. I'm the Senior Director of Product for the Dragos Platform. So let's do a brief overview, just a handful of slides to kind of just give a refresher if you already know, or maybe it's new to some of you, just kind of an overview of what the platform can do. So we divide up our platform into basically 4 primary use cases. So asset visibility, vulnerability management, threat detection, and incident response. So asset visibility is basically the foundation of any cyber program. Anytime you're trying to do cybersecurity inside of IT, OT, any environment, you have to have that asset visibility. You have to know where your assets are. That visibility allows us to do vulnerability management against those assets that we discover. It also allows us, having that visibility, not just the asset visibility, but network visibility. We can do threat detection. So we can detect, active attacks and threat behaviors, adversary activity, all just by basically watching traffic on the wire. And we'll do a deep dive in each one of these. And then we also have our incident response capabilities. So instead of just saying, here's an alert, here's something, here's something that's happened on your network, we provide playbooks that are written by OT security experts that say, here's what you need to do. Here's where you need to go gather information from maybe another system. Here's what you can do within the Dragos platform, basically giving guidance so you're not on your own, trying to figure out, okay, what does this alert mean? What should I do with this alert? And so on. So Sam, let's go to the next one. Perfect. So a little bit more on asset visibility. So again, asset visibility is kind of that foundation to the entire program. So it's key to be able to have insight into all of the assets, every detail that we can get. We do this entirely passively, so we're not doing anything that is dangerous, that has high operational risk. We call it operation safe because we're basically just watching passively on the network. That allows us to get device level detail, which means we can get things like firmwares, model numbers, vendors. If it's a chassis device, we can get the slot number. There's all this information that's actually flowing over the network. And if it's there, we can pick it up. And we can pick it up, ourselves, but we also have, ability to do integrations with CMDB, firewalls, to enrich information bidirectionally if needed. If we need to send information, we'll do that. If we need to receive information, that's also available. And we take all of those assets, everything that we see on the network, and we map it with a very customizable map. So you can do grouping within the map, kind of on the fly. You want to group it by Purdue, you can see that. You can group it by device type, by zone, whatever makes sense. You can look at physical links, logical links, very dynamic map. And then we also have this this kind of unique feature we call a timeline view, to where you can kind of go back in time with that map and say, I just want to see what it looked like between this day and this day. Were there any changes, and what was talking to what? You can do things like filtering on protocol and so on. So how do we do that? We do that through ICS protocol and traffic analysis. So we say ICS protocol. We also support IT protocols, of course, as well. But that gives us that insight into everything that we need to see, not just from an inventory perspective. It does power the inventory, but it also powers our threat detection. That's how we know if something is happening that appears to align with attacker behaviors. So this is a very deep coverage across multiple vendors, multiple protocols. And we're always working with customers and always working on building and rebuilding and enhancing these, and so on. But that's basically how we handle and how we collect all this information, is this deep protocol analysis. Vulnerability management is also powered by our asset inventory. So again, we're not doing any vulnerability scanning. We're not doing things that are going to be dangerous to an OT environment, things that are going to crash systems and give you outages and downtime. We're taking that passively collected inventory and basically running it through a vulnerability management engine and making sure that we're tagging vulnerabilities based on what we've seen. We're not just limited to what we can see on the network. Not every protocol, not every device is going to send all of the details that we may need to find a very accurate, high confidence vulnerability finding. So we also allow you to import data from third-party systems. We allow you to override data within the platform. So if you know the firmware version on a set of assets, you can key that in. We'll do vulnerability management on it. We'll actually try to help you with that with our confidence rating. So with our confidence rating, you'll be able to see, was this a high confidence detection? Basically, do we have all the data we needed to definitely say the vulnerability is here? Was it medium or low? And if it's medium or low, then you have that opportunity to go in and enhance that information, augment it, maybe turn that into a high finding, or maybe that vulnerability automatically gets closed because now we know that firmware is not vulnerable. We also provide our priority ratings that are just now, next, and never. That's the real story when you're doing remediation in an OT environment. You're either going to do something now, you're going to put on a list to do next, or you're never going to do it. You're going to risk accept it. So we actually allow you to not only do you get that guidance on how should I handle this, you also get the ability to track the disposition of the vulnerabilities. So you can say, I want to close this as risk accepted, and we won't bug you about that one again, because you've risk accepted it, you can document it. Same thing for closing as remediated, closing as mitigated, and of course it will automatically close phones as we see that they're no longer present. But in addition to that guidance of now, next, and never, we also give you some mitigation or remediation guidance. So a lot of times the vendors don't have that information. A lot of times the information may be incorrect, or just, hey, you need to patch this. Well, patching might not be an option. We'll tell you other alternative means that you can use to mitigate the vulnerabilities that may have a lower operational risk. All of that visibility that we have on the network and the assets and all those different deep analysis of all of these protocols, that feeds, of course, into our threat detection, which we're fairly well known for. Our threat detection, we've done a lot with it. Some things that we've done more recently is mapping everything to MITRE ATT&CK for ICS. So that way everything can be grouped by those different tactics and techniques, and you can kind of understand exactly what it's kind of what you're looking at, and whether or not it's an attacker behavior. This is not just like an IDS or IPS style, we found a signature. We do those, we have IOCs and things like that. But we also do composite detection. So we may look at a handful of things that are actually fairly low severity, things that aren't that uncommon in an OT environment, but the collection of them, the combination of them, the sequence of them is definitely an attacker behavior. And that's where you get a lot of value to our platform, is really in those deep detections that are looking at not just, like I said, not just signatures, not just IOCs and hashes, but what's happening, and does this look like something that mimics some attacker behavior? Then, of course, just like I said with vulnerability management, when you have a notification that comes in, we also don't leave you hanging. We're not going to, give you a severity 4, severity 5 vulnerability, or a severity 5 threat detection that says, hey, it looks like you have this attacker behavior in your environment. We also give you a playbook that says, here's what you need to do. Here's how you handle it. Here's what you need to do within other platforms, within the Dragos platform. You can do investigations, create cases from it. So if you need to, continue to investigate and dive into it, you can attach other artifacts in the platform into that case, and basically, create notes and make sure that everything is handled as needed. But again, you're not left on your own. You're given that playbook. You know exactly what you can do and what you need to do to handle it. And one thing I want to call out here is all of this is powered by our intelligence. So we have the largest team of IT, of OT and ICS security experts, and you see a lot of that stuff feeding into our Worldview product. So within Worldview, of course we have those alerts and we have the reports, and we tell you what's going on in the various sectors and the various industries. We give you IOC feeds, so you can feed those into another platform and do some threat hunting against them. You've got the insights, of course, the executive level insights that you can send up the chain. But that same intelligence that we have, that we currently publish in Worldview, if you're a Worldview subscriber today, is used in the platform. And it's used basically as effectively as we can make it in the platform. So again, you see that effectiveness in things like composite detection. So we can tell you, here's an alert, here's a report of attacker behavior, here's some IOCs. Well, in the platform, we're able to take those behaviors, turn that into a composite detection, to be able to say, we're seeing this attacker behavior in your environment. So you're not left on your own. So that intelligence feeds into our visibility, how we look at protocols, how we understand how protocols should be dissected, what is normal, what is not normal. That's what powers our detections. And of course, it also powers our response. The intelligence teams that are behind a lot of the data that comes into Worldview also have a hand in creating the playbooks and how we do response, and creating the detections and how we detect threats and so on. So that basically that intelligence that we're known for throughout the industry that powers our Worldview is also flowing directly into the platform. We update that regularly through what we call our knowledge packs that pulls in all of that information. So those knowledge packs pull in all of that intelligence information, new IOCs if we have them, new detections, new vulnerability detections, everything that you need to stay up to date all comes in through that knowledge pack. All right, so I guess I'll hand it over to John Burns. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Kimberly. Yeah, I'm going to quickly go through the CHERNOVITE victimology and some detections in the platform before going into a pre-recorded demo I did. So for the CHERNOVITE victimology, Dragos assesses with moderate confidence that the victimology for CHERNOVITE is likely North American oil and gas, liquid natural gas, and electric. And it's associated with a few of the Omron PLCs and the Schneider Electric PLCs, and then also the Omron PLC control software, mainly through OPC UA. And there are some vulnerabilities, exposures, and susceptibilities, that we have listed here as well. There are some detections that we have that are either general detections that are not necessarily related to CHERNOVITE, not only related to CHERNOVITE exclusively, but would still detect CHERNOVITE or Pipedream activity. Those are categorized here under general detections. And then we have some that are related to the dust tunnel part of the suite. And then we have some detections related to Omron PLCs, Schneider Electric, ASRock driver, and the OPC UA. These are not specifically just CHERNOVITE detections, but they are detections that would catch that CHERNOVITE or Pipedream activity. So I pre-recorded a demo of the platform showing how to use the platform to look for CHERNOVITE or Pipedream activity and how to see those notifications and detections. My screen is a little bigger than most maybe, and I have a lot of tools on mine. So the font may be a little small, but it is legible. So if there are any issues with that, I apologize. Hello, my name is John Burns. I'm a principal industrial hunter with Dragos' OT Watch team. Today in this video, we're going to demo how to look for signs of vulnerability activity related to the CHERNOVITE or Pipedream malware. The first step to determining if you have any kind of vulnerability or any activity related to CHERNOVITE or Pipedream in your environment would be to look at asset visibility and inventory. To do that, we're going to go over to the asset inventory of the Dragos platform, and this will show all of the assets that you have in the visibility of the Dragos platform. From here, you can look for any Schneider Electric devices. And then in the model, you should be able to locate any of the vulnerable PLC models that are related to the Pipedream malware. And in here, we can see the PLCs with the MAC addresses, and we would be able to see any IP addresses related to those PLCs, as well as any the model and the firmware. The other part of the vulnerability is related to Omron PLCs. So using the same searching up here for anything to do with Omron, here we can see one of the Omron PLCs related to the vulnerability. And you can use this to gather the IP address or the MAC address of these devices to do more searching, looking for any signs of activity related to these devices. Once you have an idea of your assets that could potentially be vulnerable, you would just need to look for any signs of that activity. One way we can do that is through the new CHERNOVITE Pipedream dashboard that has been released to the Dragos portal. So you go to the dashboard screen, after you install it, you go to the dashboard screen, you'd select the CHERNOVITE Pipedream dashboard. Then you would navigate to the CHERNOVITE Pipedream dashboard. And from here, you would see the counts of activity related to potentially vulnerability activity. It's important to note that these are like related activity. It's not necessarily that it's malicious. These are actually legitimate activity as well. So the things that we're looking for are your Schneider Electric PLCs communicating over the specified ports, and the Omron PLCs over port 9600, and a specific URI that was provided as part of this vulnerability. Code Assist on Schneider Electric PLCs by default uses these ports, as does the Omron PLC use port 9600. So this could all be legitimate traffic. What you want to do is you want to compare the source and destination IPs, and you want to make sure that for the destination IP being one of your Schneider Electric PLCs, for instance, in this Schneider Electric PLC IPs and ports, you want to make sure that where the destination is a Schneider Electric PLC, you want to make sure that the source IP is expected activity over these ports. If it is a known engineering workstation, something where you know that time frame and that activity is legitimate, then you can dismiss that and you can move on. But if you happen to see anything in here related to a unrecognized asset, maybe an asset that you don't have, or you wouldn't expect this traffic from that asset, that's something that would warrant a little more investigation. The same would be true involving the Omron PLCs over port 9600. You would want to look, identify where your IP address is your Omron PLC, and you would want to look for where the source is coming from an asset that is not a legitimate, does not have a legitimate reason to be communicating over port 9600 to that Omron PLC. Also with the URI, it's going to be a similar thing. The URI is related to HTTP traffic that goes to the Omron PLCs. So you would want to make sure that what you're seeing is where your IP address is your Omron PLC that is coming from legitimate sources that should be communicating to the HTTP interface of that Omron device. And you would want to go through and you can remove those. You could filter those out using, like, if this device here was known to be, that would be okay traffic, you could then hit this minus and you could filter out traffic related to this device, communicating to that PLC. And then the platform would update, and then you would be able to move on to the next device in the list. Another way to look for potential CHERNOVITE Pipedream activity is to look through notifications and detections that have fired in the Dragos platform. The notifications and detections are included with the most recent knowledge packs. So how we would get there is when you first come into the Dragos platform, you would be on dashboards. You'd be in the dashboard screen. And from here, you would want to move the navigation bar over to view the detections dashboard. And the detections dashboard, what it shows you is it shows you all the detections that have fired in the Dragos platform, given this filter criteria. So for example, this is showing us we want to group by detection, and we want to get a count of the different detections that have fired based on descending order, showing only the ones that are unread with a minimum severity of 1 up to 5. So that's showing us the ones that have fired the most, all the way down to the ones that have fired just like one time in the platform. And that's doing it through this time range. So for this instance, it's May 2nd through May 16th, 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. So, what it does is it splits that up into 4 quadrants based on the type of detections that we have in the Dragos platform, which are modeling, configuration, indicators, and threat behaviors. So for this one, we have a few detections that are related to potential CHERNOVITE and Pipedream activity. In threat behavior quadrant, we have the Omron NX1P2 PLC hard-coded telnet username and password used. In indicators, we have the Omron PLC NX1P2 HTTP hard-coded username and the OPC UA Python library initial connection detections. And in configuration quadrant, we have a couple of the Omron FINS notifications. So for this portion of the video, I'm going to show a couple of these notifications so you get an idea of what they would look like if they fired in your environment. So we're going to start in the threat behavior quadrant, and we're going to look at the Omron NX1P2 PLC hard-coded telnet username and password used. So from here, we would click view, and what this would do would pivot over to the notification manager and show us only the 8 notifications related to this Omron telnet username and password notification. So from here, you can see the time and date that the notification fired, what notification fired, and the assets involved, both the source IP and the destination IP. So for example, with this notification, this one is telling us that we had an attempt was made to log on to an Omron NX1P2 PLC at 192.168.250.1 from a host with an IP address of 192.168.250.239. So what this is telling us is that this asset 250.239 attempted to connect to the Omron PLC at 250.1 using hard-coded telnet username and passwords. So this is something you would want to look at, and you'd want to investigate whether this is legitimate expected traffic or if this is something that would not be expected traffic, so that you could then investigate that further and look and see if that is actually malicious activity potentially related to CHERNOVITE and Pipedream. Another detection we can look at is down in the indicator section, the OPC UA Python library initial connection. Again, we click view, and that shows us only the 8 notifications that are that OPC UA Python detection. This one comes in as a severity 4. And the reason this one is a severity 4 is because it is a higher confident detection that is less prone to false positives. So because of that, we can rate this as a higher severity. So if we go into this notification, this one is telling us that there was a Python OPC UA client library initial connection from the asset at 212.177 to the asset at 56.7. So from here, you would want to investigate this activity and look at the network traffic and see if there was if this was expected activity from this source asset to the destination asset. And if not, then you would want to investigate that further and just see if that was malicious activity. All of this could be the same for any of the related detections that any of the detections related to the CHERNOVITE and Pipedream activity. Thank you.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that we would be including a high-level summary of some of the different mitigations that we recommend. We do provide a more detailed guidance to customers in the customer portal. You'll also get other technical details on certain mitigations, whether or not you're using the Dragos platform. But here are some best practice ones that we'd like customers to be aware of. A lot of these you're already familiar with, but for those that may not have had to deal with this sort of threat before, make sure that you're monitoring your environments. Asset visibility is absolutely fundamental and key to anything else we've discussed today. And ideally, if you can map those threat behaviors against a certain industry recognized framework, like MITRE ATT&CK for ICS, then you would see where the different threat components fall within the kill chain and what types of behaviors the threat group might be trying to utilize. As I said, visibility is key for everything else that's going on within your environment, and spotting threats, knowing which systems are vulnerable. But in this case, it's extremely important you're not just monitoring north-south bound traffic, but east-west communications as well. Some companies, they sort of try to minimize the resource spend and just monitor the boundaries or the edge of their OT environment. In this case, if the adversary was within your network, there would be other places that you'd want to be monitoring besides just that OT-IT boundary or north-south. So the east-west is very important. And then thirdly, and this is tied to visibility, but having intimate knowledge of all the systems and the different controls on those within your OT environment is critical. It's just basics that you need to have in place. Not only knowing which systems and which devices you have, but published vulnerabilities and threats that could try to compromise those systems. And these are the things that we do provide with the Dragos platform. And then lastly, making sure that you have not only a prepared incident response plan, but one that you've practiced. There's nothing worse than being in the middle of an incident and realizing that you don't have a good IR plan, or you haven't rehearsed it, and there could be some issues that you could catch. So during turnover or downtime, make sure you're building in some time to run through that IR plans for your OT environments. All right, I was watching the Q&A, and I believe we've answered most of the questions that came through live. So John or Kimberly, do you see any that you'd like to just speak to verbally out of the ones that are left?
Sure, yeah. So there was one that I already answered, typed out, but I think it's probably relevant to bring up. So someone asked kind of what tools we use for passive scanning or passive detection. So we've built our own sensor stack that runs on our own custom operating system called Dragos. And that Dragos sensor can be physical, it can be virtual. We use some off-the-shelf engines because it makes sense to do that in some cases, especially for things like dissecting IT protocols. That's all been done. For dissecting OT protocols and doing some deeper things, a lot of these things are not terribly simple to parse or completely undocumented. So we write our own OT protocol dissectors in Rust to make sure that we're secure and efficient as possible. And then we have our own, basically a custom packet broker that helps us determine which engine to send to just based on the traffic. So it's very custom. We're not just using like an off-the-shelf tool like a Suricata or a Snort and just throwing IOCs into it. We're doing quite a bit more when it comes to how we handle traffic, how we manage traffic, and how we parse it.
Okay, and we do have names with some of the other questions that were submitted that we haven't responded to. So we'll commit to following up with those individuals and we'll give you a good response. Well, you know what? We're going to give you guys back something that is invaluable. We appreciate your time today, but we don't need to take the full hour. So thank you to everyone again for your
Sam,
time. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make a couple of people had asked about the dashboard. It is supposed to be uploaded to the portal today, so it will be available via the portal later today to download, and it includes installation instructions on uploading that into the platform.
Yeah, good. I appreciate you mentioning that, John. Thank you. All right. So if there are questions about our platform in general, you can ask for a demo. There's a lot of material online. We will post this webinar with a link to the slide deck you can use for future reference. If you have a sales-oriented question, of course, our sales team is eager to jump on a call and make sure that we get those questions answered. And if you want to go and do a deeper dive on CHERNOVITE or Pipedream in general, dragos.com/Pipedream. But thank you to everyone for joining today. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars.